is a very unique market where 97% of the businesses are actually small and medium businesses. But then, what are you doing to convert this passion of yours into actually a money making profession? Is the question.
What are the challenges small business owners would face according to you?
Major challenges are manpower and financing, right? Especially in the Canadian market, there is a huge support system for this.
How a businessman should think. At the same time, how can government, like maybe federal or city or provincial, would help this businessman to thrive in their business?
That's a very common mistake I see with a lot of enthusiastic entrepreneurs, and it's one of the cheapest options that you can get for starting a business.
Namaskaram everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for deciding to watch this video. I appreciate your presence here. Thanks a lot for sharing this video. Thanks a lot for commenting your opinion on this video. If you are into business or if you want to start a business, if you know someone who does any kind of small businesses, this podcast is for you. Today we are meeting Mr. Pravin Patabarla, who is an experienced relationship manager in one of the major banks in Canada. Pravin is highly experienced relationship manager who has spent years working with top tier banks right here in Canada, helping businesses of all sizes thrive with their ambitions and dreams. He possesses a deep understanding of critical role the banking system plays in success of small businesses, particularly when it comes to accessing the right kind of financing. In our conversation leading up to this, Praveen shared some incredible, valuable insights into various types of business loans available, and more importantly, how small business owners can strategically leverage the resources to achieve their growth objectives. He's seen firsthand how the right financial partnership can be a game changer. Let's tap into his knowledge on navigating the often complex world of business credit, understanding what lenders look for, and uncovering the opportunities that exist for small businesses to flourish with support of banking system. So get ready to gain some actionable insights that could directly impact your business's success. Thank you. Enjoy the podcast.
Karan, Praveen, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. I'm doing great. I appreciate your time and you have accepted to come onto the podcast to teach us what you have learned all through all through these years of wonderful experience of yours. But then I haven't dig deeper. Didn't get chance of digging deeper into your in your career. Do you mind taking us through what you do and what are the things you're going to teach us today?
No, sure, sir. Thank you. First of all, thank you for for this opportunity. Definitely. So I have about 18, 19 years of commercial banking experience. I've worked with various banks across different geographies, and I've also helped a lot of clients in a lot of different things, right from their SOPs to their initial setups to their banking arrangements and various other things throughout my career. So I started back in 2007 in India. I was with a financial institution called ICICI, and then I was there for about 3.5, 4 years, and then I moved to HSBC. And then when I was there in HSBC India for about 7 years, worked in different other geographies. Then came to Canada in 2017, and have been in commercial banking since then. So that's broadly my experience. My experience again is largely with small businesses, setting up and establishing small businesses, helping them with their initial, setup things that I help them with. That's been my career mostly so far.
Oh wow, wonderful to know. Because in current situation in this great nation, knowledge is treasure. And thanks to our common friends who have introduced you to me, and I thought, okay, let's get into this and try to understand how a small business owners can get into and thrive in current situation if they can. So what are the challenges small business owners would face according to you, besides the given situation in the country right now? what are the other challenges which you have seen they would face?
Right. So, firstly, to tell you, Canada, I mean, compared to other economies that I worked in, Canada is far more, small business friendly. And Canada is a very unique market where 97% of the businesses are actually small and medium businesses. So the economy thrives on it, and be it banks or be it any federally funded organizations, or for that matter even government grants, they favor and they look startups as a very favorable mechanism to boost business. But again, having said that, there are a lot of challenges that small businesses or businesses when they start up, face. A couple of them being, wearing a lot of hats. Like the owner ends up wearing a lot of hats. One day he's fighting fires on finance. One day they're fighting fires on production. One day on manpower, and all these fires are like, immediate ones. And without that fire being sorted that day, or that fire being put off that day, the business wouldn't go forward, right? So if you ask me, major challenges are manpower and financing, right? And most often when businesses actually, like when these small businesses are run, they're often run by one key person, or say two or three key people. They're very much engrossed into the business. That's a challenge, actually, if you ask me, right? In my experience of what I've seen as startups, that's a challenge. Owners need to step up and look at the business from an eagle eyes perspective. That's when they'll be able to see more opportunities, and they'll also be able to see aspects for the business to grow to the next level. And that's a very important point, if you ask me. So that's a challenge. So if you are fighting fires every day in your business, that's another major challenge.
I heard you. I heard the term startup here. So, from being from IT industry, the only startup I know is IT startup. So, how would you how would you classify? Are you classifying that any business which is starting up as a startup here? And what is the classification for small business, medium business, and a large business?
Right. So typically, startup in banking parlance, startup is any business that's starting afresh. It could be a restaurant, it could be a spa, it could be an IT business company, it could be a wholesale trader, it could be a small time manufacturer, a contract manufacturer, anyone, a small trader. All of these, quantify as startups and small businesses. And typically, any business that is, say, less than revenues of $3 or $4 million will still be considered a small startup and small businesses. And anything above four, between four and say five and 25 or 50 is considered medium businesses, right? I know that's a large band, but then again, you have like mid market, senior mid market, like that's the classification that goes around. So let's say to classify it even more better, maybe 5 to 10 million, 5 to 15 million is say a mid-sized, small mid-sized company. 15 to 25 million is a decent mid-sized company, and anything above 25 and below 50 is a large mid-sized company. Anything beyond 50 million, I'd rather put as a large corporate, because by then what happens is, if you're doing 50 million in revenue, I mean, barring maybe something like a transportation company or a logistics company that has fleet of trucks, for them 50 million is an easy target. But let's say a manufacturing company, right, or a wholesale distributor or a trader, if he's doing more than 50 million, by then they would have a very standard setup, in terms of a CFO or a CEO. So they have a C-suite, employees that are running the organization. And that is kind of a feature for a large corporate, according to me.
Wonderful. So thanks for the clarification and classification, because sometimes from as an outsider I never have this picture, right? So thank you for that. So having said that, let's focus more on small businesses, okay? Because I see they are the ones which create most of the jobs with the logistics, with the basic employment, and other things. Basically, they add a lot to the job market. That's how I look at it. Of course, medium, large scale do add, but they have their own. Let's focus more on small side today, and probably in the next podcast, maybe we can discuss about medium and large scale. So yeah, take me through the small business things here. So let's say if I have decided to start, what should I, let's say a retail business, for example, okay, a garment business, which I hire local tailors, I get supplier, cloth supplier from local businesses. And I source everything from within Canada, and now I want to create a business around it. So what would you suggest? Take me through step by step process how a businessman should think as he or she is setting up the business. At the same time, how can the government, like maybe federal or city or provincial, would help this businessman to thrive in their business?
No, that's a very very good question, and actually, it requires quite a bit lengthy answer to be precise. But see, there are two broad aspects, right? One is the financing aspect. How much would you need, right, to finance this kind of a business, right? When you have a idea in your mind, it definitely comes with some kind of expertise that you might have in it. Like for example, if you take your own, the example that you cited of a garment business, right? You will get that idea only if you have some kind of background in it, and that's very important. You need to know what the market is, how it functions, and what the product that you're selling, how it works in the market, and how it comes ready to the market, right? That is one. Second aspect is, of course, the financing required to set this up. Third is the ecosystem, right? When I say ecosystem, a lot of things come into it, like technology, right? How technology can help your business run smoothly and take you to the next level, right? And then grants, or programs that can help you, guide you, coach you, right? For example, you, as I said, you might have to wear a lot of different hats because you're a startup, right? So you might be good in what you're doing. Like if you talk about garments, you might be really good with garments, maybe because of family history, maybe because of your experience or whatever. But you might not know finance well, right? You might not know marketing well, or you might, for that matter, not know the markets well, right? Markets is a different thing, and marketing is an altogether different thing, right? So for all these things, there are a lot of support systems in the economy, like in the market, especially in the Canadian market. There is a huge support system for this. So let's say, for example, you know if you go to, and there are a lot of programs that banks provide also, right? So for example, banks have something called a CSBFL, a Canada Small Business Loan Financing Program, where they fund you up to $500,000, right? If you're buying equipment, if you're putting up a shop, and if you're doing some leasehold improvements or renovations, right, for your inventory, and a bit of working capital. So they do all of that for up to $500,000. And if you're actually buying a real estate that is used for your business, then the program can extend up to 1.15 million. So the repayment terms are very flexible. So that is one support, like financial support, right? Or if you go to someone like a BDC, Business Development Bank of Canada, which is a federally funded corporation, so they provide startup loans of $250,000. Let's say if you want to export, right? If you want to get into export markets, selling to US or selling to South America or selling to any other international markets, then there is EDC, Export Development Bank of Canada, right? They help you. It's also a crowd corporation. Or if you're into any ag related products, agriculture related products, or farming related products, then there is FCC, Farm Credit Canada, right? So there are various organizations that step in to support you to start your business. And trust me, not many economies have this kind of ecosystem for startups. Like the classic example would be Asian markets, or for that matter, even American, South American markets. When I say American, I'm talking about US markets as well. The kind of support system here is amazing, right? And not just that, there are a lot of advisory programs that BDC, EDC, and FCC provide, where they guide you on how to do it. Like, for example, BDC has a lot of advisory programs where they guide you how to market your product, right? This is all basic advisory. So for a little cost, they give you how to manage your finances. They teach you, right? They teach you how to market. They teach you how to, streamline your production. So that's again a support. And then obviously there are many more organizations like Futurepreneur, right? And they fund you. If you go to them with a business plan, they help you. They fund you with some minimum funding that will help you start a business. So there are a lot of things that can play a major role for a business to start, and there are a lot of institutions that help you in building these roles, right? All you need to do is you need to have a plan, you need to have some experience, and once you have a plan in your mind, you can always approach a bank. They will give you a startup loan under any of these programs. Once you do that, you can take advisory from any of these institutions again, right? And they help you. Not just that, I've seen a lot of bankers here connect you to clients similar to your industry. We can network, right? And that's very important as well to build an ecosystem for you.
This is very useful information. BDC, CDC, and Farm Credit Canada. I know about Farm Credit Canada because I've applied some jobs there, but I didn't get charge of applying at BDC and CDC. It's very very good information what you have provided us today.
Right.
So having said that, do you mind? So this is one example for having starting a garment business, wherein which you mentioned that we need to be aware of nitty-gritties of the kind of industry we are getting into, and we need to be aware of the the ecosystem, like the clothing, the raw material, and
Correct.
all that stuff, and aware of the methodology. How do you produce the garments at the end? So unless you are aware of it, you will not be able to thrive in the business. And that's what you're suggesting. And I mean, as a banker yourself, would you look at this when someone comes to you for a loan? Let's say if I come, I don't have any of these backgrounds, but I have passion. So, do you think the passion alone would get me a loan?
See, it depends. It depends largely on, of course, it definitely. I mean, passion does help a long way, right? And we see a lot of passionate investors, let me put it that way, who might not have real experience in that field, but are very enthusiastic to start a business, right? Then there are several factors that we check. What are you going to do, right? You have passion, that's great, right? You're putting in some of your own savings, hard earned money, that's great. You're asking for a loan, which means you're going to be liable for the money that you're going to borrow. That's also great. But then what are you doing to turn your passion into money or turn your passion into a business that can employ people, right? So usually we then look for what help are you taking. So let's say, for example, you're a passionate cook, right? And you want to get into food business and you want to start a restaurant. Now, you don't have any experience. All you would have probably cooked is for 15, 20 people at home. That would have come out really well. And then everyone said, good. And then you wanted to become a chef and start a restaurant, right? Which is not wrong, right? But then what are you doing to convert this passion of yours into actually a money making profession is the question. So let's say you might be willing to take help from a chef, right? A seasoned chef, employ a chef, and then run the business with him for a while, right? Or you might be having some full time resources that can help you in transitioning you into a full time chef, right? So these are things that that banks look when you come with no experience but a lot of passion. And then also, banks also look at, but not only banks, but these institutions also look at what kind of planning have you done, right? When you want to start these businesses, right? So do you have a business plan, right? Have you projected your total project cost? And for a lot of businessmen, they don't understand when banks say total project cost. It just does not mean how much you need for equipment and how much you need for lease. No, it means how much do you need as working capital? How much inventory are you going to put in? You're not going to have sales in the first 2, 3 months as much as you need, right? So what are you going to do to meet expenses during that time? All this forms a part of the project report, right? A total project cost. And then what are your sources of funds, right? What is the use of your funds? So let's say you're going to put in $200,000. You're asking for a $500,000 loan. So your total cost is $700,000, total source. And then how are you going to use it? I'm going to set aside 150,000 for, for salaries and other expenses the first 3 months. I'm going to use 250 for equipment. So you need to have that breakdown, right? You need to be able
Sir,
to.
sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to understand, do we have any minimal amount which we need to put? And does that differ with each and every kind of industry? For example, let's say I want to start an IT company. What is the minimal amount for that? I want to start a restaurant. What is the minimal amount for that? Or maybe I want to start a construction company. What is the minimal amount for that? So do we have a minimal amount for each industry, or is it like flat single rate?
So there is no minimal amount required for any industry, right? Again, it all depends on the size. Like let's take the same restaurant example, right? If you want to do a small takeout joint, right, a takeout center, you wouldn't need more than 100, But if you want to do a 2000 square foot 30-seater restaurant, right, you would then probably need 350 to 400K. But if you want to do a 3000 square feet 80, 90 seater, then you'll need about 800, 900K. So there's no minimal amount. But what happens is, depending on the industry, depending on the exposure, depending on the experience of these institutions with those industries, there is a minimum percentage that banks would like to see coming from the owner as contribution, right? Let's say, for example, for restaurants again, I keep taking the restaurant example because that's what most of the entrepreneurs connect with, right? So that's why I keep taking that example. So let's say, for example, if you want to start a restaurant and if your total cost is say $200,000, right? Bank expects to see at least 32% coming from your end, from the owner's end, right? The next 68% is what the bank will give us loan, right? Let's say if you're looking at starting a spa, right, an aesthetics clinic, then bank can go all the way up to 90-95%, right? Let's say if you're
But
looking
wait
at
a
a
second, banks gonna give. Do you mind repeating that particular part because it seems interesting. So so anything related to health, banks gonna put more money into the in as an investment or as a loan?
not only related to health, there are certain categories of industries. Like for example, aesthetics and spa is not really health; it's more like cosmetics. But then banks can give up to 90-95% as loans, right? Let's say, for example, you're looking at something like a trading. If you're exporting or importing any, or if you're a wholesaler, then bank will give up to 80%. If you're a grocery store or a convenience store, then banks will like to give anywhere between the 65-70%. So it depends on the industry,
Can
right?
I ask an interesting question? Sorry, I've been
Yeah,
keep. This is a
no,
very interesting part of
sure.
because we are not just creating a business here. We are creating opportunity. We are creating jobs for the Canadians. We are also creating an avenue to make dreams come true and make enable the Canadian dream for people who want to go there and achieve, put their passion out. It's more about the passion, right? So okay, sorry. How about the IT side of it? So, let's say if I want to develop a mobile application, if I want to develop, if I have a service-based company, let's say I want to go and fix laptops or servers for that matter. So, what do you think? How much do you think as a startup founder one has to invest?
So IT again is a very broad topic. To be honest, IT itself is a very broad field. Right now, if you're looking at product development in IT, right? If you're developing a product, then obviously funding in the initial stages is not going to come from any financial institutions, right? You will probably go through, seed funding. You'll probably go through family and friends, raise a bit of money, put in your own stake in terms of manpower hours, and get the pilot product ready, right?
Okay.
But once you have the pilot ready, right? Once you've tested, once you have the beta version ready, once you have the, you'll go for pilot, you'll deploy it in the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you see success, that's when lot of IT owners tend to make a mistake,
Okay.
right? And I'll
That
tell
that
you
was my
why
next question. Yeah, go ahead, please. Let's get
so
into the mistakes. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'll tell you why what the mistakes can be,
Yes.
right? So let's say I've started an IT company. I've started an IoT based product, right? I've developed it with my skills. I've used my friends and family. I've gathered about 300-400,000 dollars from friends of mine. I have the final product ready. I've launched it into the market. I've piloted it with say a couple of clients. It's running well. Now is the time I need to market it, right? And then once I market it, that's when I'll start getting more revenue, and then that's when things go fast. Now to market it, I need money, right? Now, if I have a pilot product ready, and if the pilot is successful, and if I can establish that I'm going to get contracts or I've got contracts, at least say 5 or 10% of whatever I think is the market, no, I think it can go to. I usually make the mistake of going and getting additional equity. So I sell my stake, right? And at that point, my valuations are not high because I have not yet penetrated into the market. So I'm giving away a lot, a lot of stake for a lot less money, right? But that's where you have to come to banks. If you're an IT company, banks have specific divisions. Like, for example, there's RBCX or there's BDC Capital, for example, right? So if you're able to impress these institutes with your product, they will actually fund you for your next level of growth. Instead of taking equity, they fund your debt. And the repayment for this debt need not be like a standard loan installments or a standard loan repayment, which is the case for a regular business loan. So the repayment will be structured according to your projection on revenues. So let's go back to the example of the IoT product that I spoke a while back, right? So if the IoT, so for these kind of IoT products that are SaaS based, there it's not possible to get revenues right away. Although the product is established, it takes time to print it into the market, get the client base, and once the client base is set, that's when you will start receiving subscription amounts. So the debt that these institutions structure, they structure it in such a way that your repayment options are after you start receiving the revenue. So they try to structure the repayment in accordance with what you project the cash flows to be. So that gives you gives the business owner a lot more comfort in doing his business, in doing their business and going and marketing, getting clients without having to worry about the initial liquidity issues, right? So again, IT is abroad. So this is when you have products, right? But then if you're looking at, say, hardware implementations, or if you're looking at software implementations, then that's a different ball game altogether. You're in a consulting space, IT consulting space. That is more to do with working capital, right? So you have projects with you, clients are ready to take your services or use you as their consultants to implement, but then their payments are milestone based, right? In those cases, you will probably have to rely on regular loans as working capital loans, where you take a loan, you take care of your employee expenses, right? And when once the client pays you, you then close the loan out. So those can be working capital loans or working capital lines.
Great. So what is a typical interest rate for these kind of loans? For example, the working capital loans.
Right. So interest rates is again a very interesting topic. And I know for a business that is starting, cheap capital is what they all need, because obviously that helps them to make more money, right?
You
That's,
mean the seed capital is the one which enables us making more money? Is that what you're trying to say?
pardon me, no, I meant cheap capital, capital at cheaper rates,
Cheap capital. Okay, got it.
right? So if you get like probably getting loans at cheaper rates, at good rates. But you also should understand that when banks and financial institutions lend, they're taking a lot of risk on a startup,
Mm.
or a company that's small, because the chances for the company that is small for it to fail are very, very high, right? Comparing to a big established company or a big elephant that's actually, well oiled, it's running, it's been established, it has got a lot of experience and, number of years behind it. So obviously it's all risk reward. So the loans that you get when you're a small company, or in the business that gets when it's a small company, are higher in rate. But again, to be honest, Canada, again, as I keep insisting it, is has got wonderful startup ecosystem. So the CSBFL loans that I spoke about a little while back, they are priced fixed at prime plus three. So whatever your prime is, plus 3% is the interest rate. So tomorrow, if prime goes down, your interest rate goes down. If prime goes up, your interest rate goes up. So it's very flexible, and it's one of the cheapest options that you can get for starting a business, right? On the other hand, BDC, EDC, there are other institutes that do lend you, but then they tend to come at a little more higher cost because they take much more higher risks.
Wonderful, so wonderful. I guess I know you're busy, man, so I don't want to make you sit here for longer. So before we call it our podcast, so I wanted to get 5 tips from you for a successful business, like the establishment of it, as well as the financial support from the system. It could be banks, it could be federal, it could be, as I said, any kind of system which supports the business to grow. So, give me 5 tips for a businessman to establish a successful business, including the support system.
Right. So first and foremost, have a plan, right? Business plan is the most important, right? The neater and the more detailed your business plan is, the more chances are for you to get not only, finances and starting the business, but also it acts as a bible, it acts as a guide, right, for you to run the business. At any given point in the next 2 3 years, you will know what was your plan and then where are you standing against it. So it's a good guide, right? So have a nice, well prepared business plan. I'd like to add to that, there are a lot of, there are a lot of consultants in the market that do business plans, right? You pay and you get good quality depending on how much you pay, but that's not really important, right? Don't think that the business plan document is just for you to give it to the bank for a loan. No, think of it as your guide. So sit with the consultant who makes the business plan, tell them your ideas, tell them your vision, depending on which a true close picture of the business plan arrives. Because banks really look into this plan and they compare it to the industry standards, and then they see how realistic are your numbers, right? So that's a very, very important. So have a very good business plan. Two, study the market very, very well, right? A lot of times, a lot of businessmen, a lot of people are very enthusiastic, so they get into the market because they have some money and because banks are giving loans, but they fail to study the market. Understand the market, study the market, look at your competitors. Don't think your competitors are your enemies. Think of them as your friends, because in this volatile business world, right? It's very, very important for you to have friends who know what you're doing. So tomorrow, if you're in trouble, you can go to them, discuss your problems, right? Everyone's business is unique. Like I might be running a business which is into manufacturing. I could have a competitor running doing the exact same business. But trust me, the way I do it is totally different from the way he does it. Although we have the same product and we separate the same set of clients. So tomorrow, if I have a problem, if I have someone to I can talk to, then we will also get solutions. So building a community is important. So study the market well, build a good community. Number three, plan your finances, right? That's a very common mistake I see with a lot of enthusiastic entrepreneurs. They try to put in everything they have to start their business without having any solid backup. Understand this: banks can support you to start the business, but they expect you to have liquidity when there are difficult situations, right? Banks are not fair weather friends, but having said that, it might not be possible for them to lend to you again and again at every situation, because at one point or the other, the bank will think that it cannot take more risk on you. But if you have the conviction, if you have the passion, and if you know that you can run your business, then you need to put in more money. So always have a good backup to inject into the business, even if there are any difficulties, right? Then the fourth one, be ready, be open, right? And be adaptable, right? You need to be open to take suggestions. Again, as I said, it's very, very important to be above the business and not in the business always. Yes, when you start the business, you wear a lot of hats, you're fighting a lot of fires, but at some point or the other, you need to learn to step back, step up, and see the whole broader plan. Once you do that, you'll be able to go back and implement bigger things, have bigger plans, right? And be open to seeking advice. It can be an advice from your competitor, as I said before. It can be advice from a financial institution. It can be advice from an advisory company. There's a lot of support system ecosystem within, within the economy, especially the Canadian economy, that can actually help you with advisory, right? It's very important to adapt and be open and learn, right? And last but not the least, the fifth tip is always look out for the economic keys, right? There can be a lot of uncertainties and a lot of economic developments that happen. So always have plans to counter these economic uncertainties. They might not come, you might not need them at all, but if you have these plans, then you're a very robust business, right? For example, I was talking to a client who was into logistics transportation, right? And I'll wind this up very clear by giving this example. You understand why having plan B is very important. He was heavily dependent on auto. He started this business in 2016, and he was heavily dependent on supplying logistics for auto manufacturing companies, right? He was based out of Windsor. 2017, when governments negotiated, treaties, the North American Free Trade Agreement and all those, a lot of auto plants were shut down in Windsor. They didn't run because of the uncertainty. And to their plants, they can shut down, but his is a small business. If he does not have loads to carry across the border or loads to carry to clients, then he has no money. He cannot pay, right? That's when he decided that he should have a backup plan. And guess what? Today, we are in a similar situation, but he's totally thriving without any problem, because from there on, he did not only depend on auto, but he also started supplying groceries, perishable goods, right? So, having a backup plan and analyzing the economic scenario is always important for your business to sustain, no matter what the size of your business is.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. These are some great points what we have discussed. This is completely new to me because I don't know much about this, much about this side of life. And thank you for sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience with me, as well as our audience today. I appreciate your time. I hope this podcast would trigger some thoughts in the viewers so that they go ahead and try to start their own businesses and create jobs for Canadians. I'm really thankful for your time and I really appreciate your presence here. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
No, thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for this opportunity, and I hope by whatever we've spoken, even if you're able to help two new businessmen start their businesses, I think it's really glad. And I think Canada again is a great startup ecosystem, and we should all leverage it to create employment, generate wealth, and pass on. Right? Thank you.
Wonderful,
Thanks a
wonderful.
lot.
Those are some
Yes,
nice
sir.
words to end. Namaskar.